Welcome to this Bennett Explains finance video. This week, a topical one, Brexit in the city. 3 threats, 3 stories you'll be reading about. How seriously do we need to take them? Now, first of all, the city matters, no doubt about it. What happens to the city affects the rest of the country. And that's because, love it or loathe it, frankly, it's around 10% of UK GDP. It employs hundreds of thousands of people. There are loads of foreign banks and law firms working here, for example. They choose to work here, and those combine to make us #1 in the Global Financial Centres Index. And it's that status that could be under threat. So what are the threats? Well, rumours doing the rounds in the press, for example, are that we could lose the ability to passport our services around Europe as a result of Brexiting. We may lose clearing business, in particular in euro-denominated securities, and partly as a result of 1 and 2, we could see an international talent and opportunities drain from London. So let's look at each in turn and ask the question, could it happen? What would be the impact? Now, passporting, first of all. You and I know what a passport is. Well, imagine you're a firm. You operate in Canary Wharf. Passporting means with a single authorisation from the FCA in London, you can basically market your services and operate around what's called the European Economic Area, which is wider than just the EU, as we'll see in a moment. So you can basically operate, if you like, offer services in France, in Germany, in Italy, without getting separate authorisations, all the bureaucracy and admin that you can imagine that involves. So it's quite neat. One passport into Europe. Now, it works for other things too. This European Economic Area idea works if you're trying to market funds around Europe as well as passport services into Europe. So a key question is going to be, post-Brexit, what sort of status will we have? And will it enable us to still use some sort of passporting arrangement? Now, the reason this is interesting, if you like, is because when you talk about things like passporting, when you talk about marketing funds, you're not actually talking about either the single currency zone or the European Union. You're talking about something called the European Economic Area, which includes a country you'll see a lot written about, Norway, plus Iceland and Liechtenstein. And they've done a slightly different deal to the other 28 members of the EU, insofar as they've signed up to the free movement of goods, services, people and capital. Number 3 there might cause us a headache post-Brexit, but they've not signed up to all EU policies, including the Common Agricultural Policy, Common Trade Policy and so on. So it's almost like a sort of EU light. And some people are saying if the UK can negotiate a status a bit like Norway, maybe we could hang on to some form of passporting, both for services, funds and so on. So it's a case of watch that space. The negotiations, it's early stage, watch that space. Now, clearing. No less than the French president has said this: the city, which could handle clearing operations in euros thanks to Britain's presence in the EU, won't be able to do them anymore. It's Francois Hollande. Is he right? Well, what is clearing, first of all? For those people thinking, what on earth is clearing? Is it important? There are 3 stages to getting a deal done in securities, essentially, to simplify. 1 is the deal. That's where a buyer and seller agree terms, price, volume, currency. Then there's clearing. This is the bit he's referring to, and this is the bit we might lose potentially. And this can be done completely separately, even in a different jurisdiction. So clearing is the vital post-trade checking and preparation for settlement. Settlement being the bit where the cash and securities actually change hands. So imagine it a bit like, buying a property. You do a deal, you agree the price on which house you're going to buy. It takes months to actually settle. Well, securities transactions are quicker, but nonetheless, there is a gap between deal and settlement. And clearing is the bit in the middle. And there's a particularly important part to clearing, which London's demonstrated itself to be very good at, and that's this bit in red, the central counterparty guarantee. What is that all about? Well, in a nutshell, you could, in theory, have banks doing separate deals with each other, and they do, in derivatives, in different currencies. But then what you want is a fail-safe mechanism that reduces the impact of a bank going bust. And that fail-safe mechanism is the central counterparty. We call it London Clearing House. And that London Clearing House has established itself as a guarantor of trades all around London and internationally. And the point is this: because it's so good at it, it actually clears around 70% of euro-denominated trades at the moment, according to the Bank of International Settlements. And here's the point: the French may threaten to take that away, but actually the courts of law take a dim view of that, because they're saying, well, what are you saying? That you can only clear euro-denominated securities transactions in Paris? Don't think so, because that breaches all the kind of international trade principles. That's going to upset the Americans apart from anything else. So the reality is people will probably continue to clear where it makes most sense to do so, where there's most liquidity and depth to the market. They won't necessarily be bullied into doing it somewhere else by politicians. So again, let's watch that space. Now, the third thing people worry about is that as a result of 1 and 2 and some other things, we might lose talent, Eurozone talent, Chinese talent, fintech talent. Maybe as a result of the perception we've slightly closed our door, we're going to lose the ability to attract the best in the world, especially here. Now, in theory, there is competition for fintech, for example. If you just look around Europe, look at the venture capital investment in startups last year. London was up against 3 other cities at least, Berlin, Stockholm and Paris. And they're all hungrily eyeing up the sort of fintech talent we currently attract. But the reality is, as a result of Brexit, we won't lose our currency, our time zone, our language. Those are all big advantages. The fact English is our language, and that's the language in which most business is done internationally, won't change as a result of Brexit. I doubt that's suddenly going to switch to German, for example. We don't lose our market depth, which is attractive for things like clearing, for example. We don't lose our lighter touch regulation. It is easier to hire and fire in London than it is in Paris, for example, and that, if you're a business person, is an attractive plus. And of course, there's the years and years of expertise and the fact we are good at certain things in London better than some other of our rivals. So I don't see this as the gloomy picture that it's sometimes painted to be. There is a threat there, but let's see how things pan out as to how real it turns out to be. So there you have it. Any questions on passporting, clearing, and all the potential talent drain, please feel free to email me, editor@Killick.com. And if you want to see other videos on related topics, don't forget our library at KillickExplains.com.